Thank you for joining us for this very super duper special well-being series session. Today's a special edition of our normally monthly well-being series. We were thinking amongst our SJP team that with the fires that happened recently, it would be nice to provide a space for our community to come and be together and maybe process some things together, or really just have a space to be with other folks who might be going through similar things. So we're very grateful to have our facilitator join us today, Susan Exchange. I will let her introduce herself, but my name is An. I have my fellow teammate Patrona here. We're here to support with whatever you might need today. So without further ado, welcome, Susan.
Hi, thank you, everyone. Yay, clap for yourself. You made it. You're here. Whew, 11 days, y'all. We're doing it. We're getting through it. So thank you all for spending a little bit of time with me here today. My name is Susan X. Jane. I'm the principal of Navigators Consulting, and I do work in that most reviled of areas, DEI and culture. So really glad to spend some time with you here today. I'm also a recovering professor, so I'm going to get a deck up because you know how professors are. So I'm going to share this. Everyone can see me. All right, over here. Okay, let me move you. And anytime, whatever I'm talking, if my mouth is moving, please feel free to jump in, say something, speak up. I want to hear from you as much as possible. Happy to share what I have to share, but really also happy to hear from you all and have you hold the space in the way that feels right for you as well. And like I said, we're still here. So that's our talk for today. Let's get into it. And also feel free to hijack the space for me. Just because I'm the one talking, I'm happy to have us go wherever the conversation wants to flow. So to that end, jump in, ask, share at any time. Questions, comments, thoughts. So hi again, I'm Susan X. Jane. Some of you I've had the pleasure of meeting before in other sessions, and some of you I may not. I am a transracial adoptee, which means I am a Black woman that was adopted by a white family. So very early on, I had interest in race, identity, and culture, and the ways that we cross those boundaries throughout our time. I've worked in nonprofit in juvenile justice, and I was a professor for a while before going out into consulting. And one of the kind of connections that I always bring to these spaces with social justice partners is that as a professor, one of the things that I studied in communications and culture was looking at apocalyptic cinema and how stories of the end times help to give us information about the time that we're in right now. And so I'll bring a little bit of that thinking in today, actually pretty helpful, I think, to help us tease some of these things apart. All right. So I want to give everyone just a second to breathe, to have a moment, and you can do this in whatever way feels good for you. So we'll just start a clock for a minute, and you can use this time to breathe. You can drop a hello in the chat and greet people if you like. You can go off camera and have a little dance party, whatever is just going to allow you to shake it off for a second and get present. So go ahead and just take some time for you. Make sure you're taking some deep breaths, probably something we don't have as much time to do these days. Shake it through your body in those places that get stuck and ground yourself in your room. Just get present in where you are in time and space. We'll take just a few more breaths. All right. I know this is a group where you are thinking about wellness and the different practices that you can use to engage in that. I know there's another session coming up with my good friend Nicole Taylor that will help you process the grief of this moment. So do keep using those practices as much as possible. And today we are going to do a little bit of, so if there's anyone that wants to comment before we get started, how you feeling? Do a little vibe check on a scale of whatever you'd like. How would you define your vibes right now? You can drop an emoji, you can put a number, you can put a word, you can put a symbol, whatever you like. Just drop a quick hello in the chat to us, just so that we can have a little vibe check before we get started. I'm appreciating the multiplicity that we're all containing these days in these emojis. Definitely a time for memes. Hard to control yourself or contain yourself to one number or one day. Yeah. And not alone, any of us, in these feelings that are coming up for us or the ways that we're navigating through this. There's no mistaking the challenges that we face. We'll look at that in just a second. And also, I hope that we'll spend some time today thinking about the possibilities as we're holding more than one thing. How do we grab onto more of what we are seeking to bring into this world? So thank you all for that. All right, so I want to start out a little bit by just orienting us in the midst of this period of revolution and unveiling. I'll share personally, I just came back from Benin in West Africa, and they were referring to this time as a time of revolution of the ancestors, where large systemic processes that have been taking place over hundreds of years, most notably in that mindset, thinking about the transatlantic slave trade, that this is a larger closing to a period of time. And so I think there are a lot of senses around the world and a lot of spaces and a lot of traditions of this being a time of great transition. And we also feeling hyper locally in our own country, the agitation that is coming with that in this period of time. So I want us to just give a little bit of thought about that. Probably for a lot of us, we feel like this, that we are under a lot of pressure, and we are going to spend a little bit of time talking about that, but we want to spend the bulk of our time today really thinking more broadly about some of the bigger questions that we can dive into rather than what is coming out of the White House right at this moment. So if it feels like you are under a lot of pressure right now, it's probably not a surprise. We're in something right now that I'm calling the tripocalypse. And the apocalypse itself, when we think about apocalyptic stories, what they really are stories that are about unveiling the truths that lie hidden within our societies. So the word apocalypse doesn't mean the end or damnation. It literally means the moment of unveiling. And it's a time where things that usually remain hidden or unspoken are made very plain. And certainly we can see that in our own time in a number of different ways. We are seeing that in nature. Some of you might have joined me when we were here for the Fellows group just a couple weeks ago, and we're talking about the fires that were going on in LA. There have been any number of major incidents that are a result of climate change that we've seen recently. We've crossed the threshold of 1.5 degrees Celsius in the rising temperature of the Earth. So for many of us that are thinking about the environment, it has been decades that we've been talking about this threshold point, and we now find ourselves at that point where the truth of the consequences of that are being unveiled to us on a regular basis. We also are in a period where what it means to know and the knowledge that is contained in humanity is changing in a way that is incredibly dramatic. And we can think about this in terms of what's happening in AI. There's a lot of concern and fear. I've talked about it, I think, with this group before, and still a lot of very rapid change happening with that. But with that, there are these other changes in the world as we know it that I want us to think a little bit about today, because what we know and what we take to be human knowledge and an understanding of who we are and what we are in the universe is changing very dramatically. And a change in our own understanding of how our consciousness shows up in that is happening as well. So really, our systems of knowledge and our knowledge itself is going through an incredible change and transformation right now. And then our systems systems are also going through a major transformation. So obviously our system of government is undergoing a radical reshaping that is causing, I think not hyperbole to say, enormous concern both here and around the world, and that it is not the only system. We have seen many systems, governmental systems, institutions that are failing and unstable at this point in time. It's not just here in the US, it is around the world in many other places. And it is not just our civil systems, but really all of our systems, looking at the collapse of our healthcare system after COVID, the changes in our economic systems as we face whatever economic system is going to take global hold in the future. So all of the systems that we're seeing are really under a great deal of weight, and we're seeing those systems collapse under that weight. So here you are in the midst of these three spaces. Any one of these could be happening at any time in history, and you find yourself in a place where these three gears are really working together to turn each other. So it's not just that one of these three things is happening, but all three things are happening, and you are this small cog in the wheels in between all of these things. For many people, this leaves us feeling very unsafe. The natural environment is changing in dramatic ways that we don't understand how we will make sure our life is sustainable in the midst of that in the future. There's a lot of uncertainty. And with these shifts in knowledge, what it means to be a human and humanity is changing really rapidly in ways that we don't completely understand or control. And certainly there is the instability of our environment. So a lot going on. I'm sure that you all are aware of this, and happy to take any comments or thoughts that people have. But I feel like we're all kind of in this and are holding the heaviness of this on a regular basis. So we have a couple of quotes that I've been using to kind of thinking through this day, through this time. One from Antonio Gramsci talking about the time of Stalin as well. The old world is dying and the new world struggles to be born, and now is the time of monsters. And so we really do see ourselves facing into these existential crises, and we see people with ill intent rising up to manage our navigation of these crises. And so it can definitely feel like we are on the highest level of the video game, fighting the big boss and really trying to do the best that we can. No wonder I'm so anxious and on edge. So when you're feeling this, I know this is a group that's really good at regulating this, and we're regulating something that's really there. It's not that we are making too much of it. It's not that we're just living in this manufactured world where we're hyping it up, but it really is there. And for those of you that are empaths, especially, you are taking on not only your fear and anxiety, but feeling it around you. And I feel like this time is kind of like a big washing machine. And those people that are less equipped to hold on in that shaking are really kind of getting shaken apart. And all of us are on it. There is no change on the washing machine that doesn't jingle. And so we are in this period of time where it really is. From Kelly, the chaos is the point. The chaos of these individuals is the point. The chaos of nature is this other sphere that we may not have control over. And then the chaos of our knowledge system is the fact that we're entering really into uncharted territory. So we have people injecting chaos into structures that are already chaotic. As I was thinking about this, I think that the systems collapse is a function of these other wider changes that are happening. And so they are also in the collapse with us as well, just really shaking the machine as we take the ride down with them as well. I want to share this other quote as well from a poem that some of you may be familiar with, saying, "Another world is not only possible, but she is on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing." And so we sit in the midst of this place where we're holding both of these roles, where we are in grief, really, at what we're seeing falling apart and the collapse of systems. And most importantly, the harm that comes to communities and people that we care about as a result of that. There is revolution happening. In many ways, these are things that we have been seeking. And at the same time, we also want to understand that those hurt and harm people. And we are also holding this opportunity to reshape the world after we get through these systems collapse, and to get to a place of greater liberation. And hopefully we can get to that. So we're sitting with these two roles as both griever and doula in this time. Vanessa, I see your hand. I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Susan. It's a pleasure to be here. One of the quotes that has been really sitting with me is the one that says, if you don't learn from your history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Mhm.
And it sure does feel like that's what's happening. And so, yeah, I just wanted to share that because it's been really heavy on my mind.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And it can feel like we're almost trapped in that cycle, right? Those who don't learn from it are doomed to repeat it, but there are some people that have not learned from it that are making decisions for those of us that have been watching history very carefully. And it can feel really painful to be trapped in that process. So I'm thinking about the heaviness that we sit with the lessons of history. We know many of us have been screaming for years that these are the consequences of the choices that we're making because we do draw on the history of our ancestors, the history of the people that have come before us. And so we understand, we see the mistakes. When you see the idea of opening camps, we know where that leads. And so we feel doomed to take that ride as well. And so that heaviness of the lack of control and being in that place, that time of monsters, really does weigh heavy on us. And how do we create enough spaciousness to bring in what is next? We can't rely on the people that are making those mistakes again to create a place of liberation for ourselves in the future. How do we hold space for that, which I think can be really challenging as well? From Bethany, Late Stage Capitalism Meets Decline of the Empire. Yeah, I think for any of us that are students of history, the empires fall, and this is really important to think about. I just finished reading a book about the fall of the Aztec Empire called The Fifth Sun. And in it, she was talking about the ways in which the colonizers who were seeking to gain power turned the people against the merchant class. And so they were fomenting tension between wealthy individuals that didn't want colonization and people that didn't have wealth that didn't want colonization, but got them to fight each other. And in the DEI space, I was like, oh, this feels like what's happening to us. We're boycotting companies. These companies are also being attacked from the back end from people associated with Project 2025. And so, how do we move when we both want to hold companies accountable and also that this is a strategy and so as we look at the fall of empires, there's a lot of lessons there. As you said, there's a lot of lessons there. And how do we draw on those lessons to kind of hold this time? Thoughts or ideas? So I don't know about you, but my friend asked me yesterday if I wake up and do like sound bath, do my sound bowl first thing in the morning. And I said, mostly I wake up to the sound of NPR, and it's not really the best sound to wake up to in the morning. Some days it can be a little bit of challenge. So I want us to think a little bit about transformation and open up some questions that can maybe move us out of this position of reactivity to the news of the moment that is definitely worth attending to, but also really activating to think much bigger about some of the bigger shifts that are happening and the bigger transformation that's happening. And let's see if we can imagine some new world here, do a little rebirth. Um, we want to think about what's possible. And I just want us to look at this tripocalypse for a minute again, that we're dealing with a fight on three different fronts. And I think it's helpful to pull that apart. In the news cycle, they just crash into each other, one thing after another, right? Like the news just piles up all day. And they really are these three different fronts that are happening. And because they're different fronts, I think it's helpful to take a moment to say, these are three different ways of looking at power, and so they require three different ways of being as well. We have the front of thinking about the environment. That is a fight with nature. You're never going to win. Nature will always be the winner in that fight. And so we're looking at this long-term cycle. What does it mean for us to create sustainability in that? We're not going to win climate change, but we can try to create a more sustainable future for humans. And that is one way of taking action. When we look at the changes in our knowledge base, whether you're someone that manages knowledge, a teacher, an educator, a storyteller, a content creator, a trainer, or a coach, what does it mean to share knowledge? How do we lean away from the fear of AI and into this new way of sharing knowledge in order to make it humanistic and something that's really additive? And then finally, the fight for justice is the fight for justice. There's no backing down, there's no reshaping it and retrenching it in the hopes that we can come together. It just is a fight. And that seems like a more straight on fight. But each of these areas takes a little bit different tactic, and each of these areas might light you up in a different way. There might be one of these that you're like, oh, I really care a lot about that, and one of these that feels like it is less in your control or less in your wheelhouse of taking action. So I encourage you to kind of tease those things apart, because some things need to be met and adapted to, and some things need to be pushed and changed. And so think about what kind of comes up for you around that. So I wanted us to think about some questions for transformation, and you can let me know what you think about these questions. I'm interested to hear some answers. I think when we are in meditation and there's something that's really challenging us, we encourage ourselves to kind of take a step back. And so I think these questions culturally help us take a step back from the reactivity that we're facing, and to think about the bigger transformations that we're going through. And these transformations feel both ancient, like the snake eating its tail, like the completion of large and very big cycles. And it also feels very much about the future, about this new way of being human that is evolving as a function of changes in technology and our world. So grab a pen if you want to. If you're a journaler, these might be good questions to put in your journal. If you want to drop answers in the chat, and happy to have hands go up and just people to jump in and have some answers. I talked earlier about the changes in knowledge, and as much as the news is full of what's happening politically, there are also some really, really big major stories about what it means to be a human that I think are going to have profound effects on humanity going forward. Think about like Copernicus. This is like Copernicus level changes when we realize that the universe doesn't revolve around us. And I think that we are seeing some technological moves that are showing us that level of change. So see Copernicus on the one side. On the other side, this is a quantum computer. So people may have heard about Willow, the quantum computer created by Google. And yes, big tech. And there are also people who are working on the science of it. So they gave Willow a problem to solve, and Willow was able to solve that problem using quantum computing stuff, which is, I don't know if I have enough knowledge to give you a longer breakdown of it, but certainly you can Google it. They're happy to tell you about it. And this is from a statement of Google, that their performance benchmark was really astonishing. They asked it to perform a computation. And in order to perform that computation, it would have taken a normal computer, as you see, 100 septillion years. So you can see all those zeros of all the years it would take. So it would have taken a regular computer all that time. So the thinking is, well, how did Willow perform that computation then? And how they think it did it is by pulling from information from parallel universes. And so I think while we're still working to understand what that means and then to validate it as an experiment, it really does get us to think about what is this place that we are in, and what do we think it is, and how does that shape what we do in this world. So here are some popular ideas about what this place is that you may see. We can think of a very Western binary way of thinking about it, that this is earth, that there's heaven above, that there's hell below. This is a place that was created by a single deity, very popular Abrahamic tradition, which many of us may have been familiar with growing up in America. A popular idea also is that this is earth school. So popular spirituality, which we see quite a lot of. We see many more people engaging in spirituality different from religion than they used to in traditional ways. So we have many popular ideas about how the spirit gets to this place, what the spirit is, what the purpose of it is being in this place, and what it is that we're supposed to be doing. So we can think of that as like the earth school of thought. We have this Willow idea now, which is science telling us that we live in a multiverse, and that there are multiple universes, that are parallel realities that are happening in other spaces at the same time, concurrent with our own. That used to be science fiction. It now is becoming science fact. What does that mean to know not only that there are multiple universes, but that we can draw on the knowledge and power of those places? And then also this idea of what's called conscious realism, this idea that is coming from mathematicians, physicists, and mathematicians saying that the world is kind of like a VR goggle set, and that consciousness puts these goggles on, and the goggles are you, this physical body, and consciousness engages in this in order to have an experience. So, really different ways of thinking. So, and there are lots of other ways that you might be familiar with as well, lots of other spiritual and philosophical transitions. So when we think about what's happening in our world, I ask you first, what is this place? Is this place a garden? Is it a school? Is it a game? Is it a simulation or a reflection? Or is it something else entirely? So take just a minute, and happy to have people journal on their own, drop stuff in the chat. Would love to hear some comments. What is this thing that we are in? How do you think about it, or how do you make sense out of it in order to plug in all the other information that you're receiving? It's just a small question, so I'll give you a minute to think about it. What is this thing that we're in? I'm curious also if this is something that you think about, that's on your radar, or something that you are actively engaging in, or something that you're like, what? I never think about that. I'm just trying to get school lunches made. My brain can't process the question. That's interesting. As a materialist, it is interesting. And I think particularly the conscious realism evolves from, as a materialist, you might be familiar with what's called the hard question of consciousness. How did evolution and the biological evolution of materials lead to consciousness? So we had single cell organisms, and they divided, and they made like the lizard, and the lizard came out of the water. So that like chain of evolution, how did each of these steps lead us to consciousness? And I think materialists have started with that hard problem of consciousness. And so there's a scientist, a mathematician named Donald Hoffman, who says if we invert the problem and say if consciousness was first and then material evolved from consciousness, he said the math suddenly makes a lot of sense. And that's kind of the origin of conscious realism. So maybe something for the materialist to think about: which came first, chicken or egg? And where are we at in that cycle of chicken and egg? So interesting. All right, we have Michelle, that I feel like I'm in an experiment. So a little bit of that simulation idea. And simulation theory, again, used to be very far out there science fiction, but as scientists went looking for mathematical and scientific proof of that, they are finding that. So a little bit interesting to be at this moment of time where we can engage with that in more thoughtful and evidence-based ways for the materialists of here. From Rachel, I believe we're in a spiritual warfare bigger than all of us. Yeah, in Benin, they were calling this the revolution of the ancestors. So this idea of it being a loop of time, or a cycle of time, and a spiritual battle that we're in is definitely showing up in a lot of traditions. From Clarissa, to think of this as a school, try to learn from their experiences, but others see it as the game that they must win. And is it a game that you can just play, and that you are not playing to win, that you're playing to learn? So kind of interesting to think about that as well. Something that we do in a lot of simulation games. What's the point of them? Is the point to win, or is the point to play? Amanda, I'm not alone. I think about this pretty regularly, all part of a similar existences, but I think it can be different for each depending on how we each are able to interpret what this is. Yeah. So thank you all for those answers. And really, again, just to take a step back, what is this place? What is the point of this? And I think this question helps me to expand, to kind of soften a little bit from being down on the battlefield to thinking about, are we trying to learn? Are we trying to grow? And when those things start to come into play, it, I think, can help lead us to a little bit of a higher mind. From Todd, I believe that a big cycle of time and space that others have gone through in their own version, conflicted when thinking about the possibility of multiverses and string theory. Yeah. I think in science fiction, to put on my apocalyptic cinema hat, in science fiction, The Western fantasy of multiple timelines is a fantasy of control, that we can leap to other timelines and thereby control what happens. And I'm not sure that's what multiple theories, multiple universes are. They just are spaces, right? So interesting to think about this. And someone else saying they definitely feel like there's more behind the curtain, that there's a reckoning happening here. And then think about how does that then trickle down to make you think about what's real, what's important, what matters. If it's a game, how do you play? If it's a school, what's the lesson? If it's a simulation, what is the point of engaging in this simulation? If it's consciousness playing with itself, what is the puppet show that it is creating? What is the feeling tone that might come out of that for each of us? So, a question to just really think about what's really happening here. And I think we ask that question just on the ground. We're in a time of misinformation. So, there's a lot of people telling us what's happening here. And I think interesting to kind of take a step back and think about those larger cycles of transformation. Um, Another question to take on is to think about what season this is. And by season, I mean it's winter here, but also to think about what season of time that we're in. So I want you to think about what is the shape that time or timelines take. And so we can think about the shape of capitalism is an upward line. So this is actually GDP per capita for the last couple of 100 years, being used by right-wing think tanks to underscore the fact that capitalism's so great. Lots of information missing from this, but a particular perspective that time is supposed to move in this way where everything gets better and we always have more of everything and everything always grows. It's kind of one of the biggest challenges with capitalism, right? We may also think of time as this branching arc of stuff. Branches are all over the universe. If we look at the pictures of the universe, it looks like lungs. If we look like trees, it looks like this. So the idea of branching possibilities kind of goes along with that idea of a multiverse, that any of those possibilities are concurrent and are coexisting, and that we kind of just branch off and take these little pathways. Or do you think about this thing in a more cyclical way? A lot of indigenous cultures and spiritual traditions really encourage us to think about time as a circle. So, how do you think about the progression of where we are at? Is the progression linear and we are just kind of in a bump on our way up to more? Is it asynchronous branches that are happening at the same time? Can we move in between them? Can we try to manifest different ideas or have any control in that? Is it cyclical or is it something else? So, again, give you just a minute to kind of think about that. How do you think about this moment in time? What is your sense about where we are at and what might be the way of facing into that? What shape does the arc of time take? You can leave a comment. You can also leave an emoji, which is a shape. Feel free to leave the shape. Oh, a pendulum. I like that. Jeremy Bearimy. I did watch The Good Place, but maybe not that episode. It's a pendulum, so something that swings back and forth between things, which means that we really have been here before, right? Giancarlo, that it's a cycle. No such shape, chaos reigns. Sometimes it does feel like chaos reigns, but I wonder when you take a step back, does the chaos organize or are we as pattern recognition creatures reading organization into these? And Nancy, thank you for the emoji. I love that. And just this, that I get just this feeling of undulation when I look at that just is like, oh, it goes like this and then like that, like a back and forth that resonates with me. I feel like I'm a bit of a spirally person too. The Ouroboros, yeah, the snake eating itself. And I think sometimes we think of that snake as like this, oh, we from a Western standpoint, we have this idea of consumption, of just like consuming itself, like nom, 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 nom. In other traditions, that snake is the snake of creation, that process of shedding is also this process of rebirth and growth as well. Sine waves, and a lot of science thinks about waves and what makes waves collapse or not. So those branching possibilities are waves that become spots as well. So interesting to think about cycles and sine waves. When entered an interestingly harsh winter, yeah. And then do all the lessons of winter apply? Because y'all, winter ends, right? And winter's important. And winter is a generative time period. And there are ways to move in winter that we learn. Being in New England, there is something beautiful in the harshness, and there is growth in that period of time. So if we're in winter, how does that help us think about these lessons? I really love that. Everyone's connected, every living thing under Mother Earth as well. Or when one of us is hurting, we're all hurting. And respecting the existence and honor every living thing is crucial at this time. And what does that mean to honor in these places where people are creating chaos? How do we allow for that to be a part of the transformation in the system? Kelly likes the asynchronous branches. Image indicates a mirrored link that would also connect in a sort of round. Yeah, it would. The age of Aquarius. We are familiar with the age of Aquarius. And remember, it wasn't just like, oh, people made up this stuff. People studied what was happening in the universe and made connections between what was happening on the ground. And by linking those connections over tens of thousands of years of human history, we start to get a narrative of how those things are interconnected. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, like that idea of infinity as well. Cycles that resonate with empires. Yeah, the empires tend to last about 250 years. And that is just about where we are in the American Empire. So interesting to think about. A storm that will pass. That's been coming to me too, Tony. A storm, cycles. From Bethany, I don't see chaos at all. Everything except that AI thing is pretty predictable. And maybe the AI thing is a part of the cycle as well. Like if you go all the way back, maybe there are intelligences that birth intelligences. So that's pretty interesting as well. And that maybe chaos is a part of the cycle. So definitely interesting to think about. And again, if it's a cycle, if it's a progression, in all of these answers, it is moving and changing. It is not going to be like this forever. It has not always been this way. It will not stay this way. And so, in all of these shapes of transformation, there is the opportunity and possibility for something else, for something different. Yeah. Just a few more answers here. People can kind of zip through these. Amanda's talking about how our idea of time is really returning to this thing, and our understanding of time being this linear progression scientifically is coming to an end. So we really are coming up on this idea of thinking in from a fifth dimensional perspective, being able to look at one, two, three, and fourth dimensions as they stack together, and as a spiral that's moving forward. So kind of like the way the planets don't go around flat. They really are spiraling as the universe expands through time. What do I think is the connection, if any, between this time that we're in the prevalence of mental health or illnesses? I think there I think there is a lot to it going on, and I think people adapt to it in different ways. And there are certainly people that are challenged to adapt to it in ways that don't interfere with their own ability to show up and be healthy in their life. I also think there are areas of neurodivergence that we may now be reading as illnesses that are actually adaptations to the universe that we are in. And I can say with my media studies hat on, in the late 90s, as educators in media literacy, we were ringing the bell that changes in technology and the way that technology works on our brain and wires our brain was going to lead to the prevalence of things that we now think of as ADHD, ADD, and neurodivergence. So I do not think that those things are always disconnected. And so, what is disruptive in people's functioning in their life in terms of their mental health, and also is the prevalence of these indicative of wider cultural and transformational shifts? And I would say there's a both and there for sure. From Murakami's quote, Murakami, wait, this is definitely time for Murakami, right? One heart is not connected to another through harmony alone. They are instead linked deeply through their wounds, pain linked to pain, fragility to fragility. There is no silence without a cry of grief, no forgiveness forgiveness without bloodshed, no acceptance without a passage through acute loss. This is what lies at the true harmony, at the root of true harmony. Just a descriptor of the yin yang, right? That the seed of destruction is in growth and the seed of growth is in destruction, that those processes are linked and connected together. And that if we could get together and link, and that's the hard thing, is reaching across and allowing the chaos in, and reaching across and allowing the growth in, and being in harmony rather than being at odds. Very challenging, but thank you for sharing that. So, what does your sense of progression tell you about the moment that we find ourselves in? As Vanessa said earlier, the history, the weight of history can feel quite heavy. And is it then informative? Can those doorways to the past also be doorways to transformation going in? If we are in a place of duality, how do we hold that duality in order to be that place of meeting and harmony? In the yin yang, the two never meet. Is there a way for us to be the bridge? Because somewhere there they touch, somewhere in the spiral, these things do connect. Is there an opportunity for us to do that? If there's a pattern, is there a way for us to do the pattern differently? Or if it's a sine wave, does our own attention and ability to focus allow that sine wave to collapse into what is coming or what it is that we're creating in the world? All right. And then what's worth doing? I think a big question that we can ask ourselves each day when we get up, and allow the large to also inform the small. So we can think about us as human beings or spiritual beings. We talked about conscious realism. I talked about that earlier for our materialists. And it makes the claim that consciousness, not space, time, and objects, are the fundamental reality. And it is properly described as a network of conscious agents. So both of these things come from both the spiritual world and the world of physics and mathematics, and both are saying the same thing, that we have the ability to show up in this space-time as conscious agents working in this material plane. What does that look like? There are many ways to say that, like I said, in many different traditions, but what that looks like asks us to think each day about what we know and what we want to share with others as a reflection and an engagement with other conscious beings. So think about, what knowledge do you have to share and what knowledge are you seeking to learn? And as we're getting to a little bit of the end of our time, I encourage you to think really concretely. Is there something in this time, as you're facing what you're facing in your own community, that you want to know? Or is there something in this time that you have a lot of knowledge about that you're willing to share? So drop in the chat "know" or "share" and a little piece so that people can say, oh, all right, like I see Bethany has said, defending the powerless makes me feel better. So I would know then, oh, hey, maybe Bethany is somebody that might be interested in this group that I'm putting together. I'll send her a private message. Or I know the people in this community and you all know each other, so you know where you might connect with people that might have some knowledge that you need or be interested in sharing some knowledge that you have. All right, thinking about grief as a marker of how we love. And I think the next well-being session will really encourage you to think about how you hold that grief and allow that to be generative in this moment. Not letting fear disable our community, and continue to empower, uplift those who are struggling. A great knowledge to bring to this. And I think I just want to double on what you said there, Vanessa, about fear, that the fear is the strategy, that the fear is the thing that blocks us from being able to step into this really expansive way of thinking. And so the more that we can turn from it when it comes up, meet it, acknowledge it, let the waves pass through, and continue on. And sometimes it's a million times a day, right, that you have to meet that fear and keep going. Anything also that you would like to learn? Right? A lot of joy on your mind. Thank you for that. I was thinking, I mean, is this administration going to be 4 years? I was like, I'm going to be old by then. I don't want to wait till I'm old to feel joy again. I would like to feel some joy in these times as well. Want to know how to keep up with AI and tech and find communities of thinkers that help to unpack what's going on. Yeah, and there are, I mean, I think there's so much. I did a deep dive into AI last year. There's so much fear around it, but AI is just, it's just all human knowledge. Like, let's not cede that territory to the tech bros yet. And let's see if we can find those people. There are a lot of people that are thinking about how to use AI to solve all problems, because it is not only the creator of problems, but it also can be some solutions to that. And there are lots of internet circles where people are doing just that. Lots of free internet courses on it too. Um, from Rachel, what I know is we must love one another, have patience, compassion, open to difference of opinions, and know that we're all interconnected. As much as it hurts to see the pushback against things, we were really setting up a lot of structures to love on each other. And those structures were really effective. And that's why the pushback is so strenuous and so hard, because we were really making progress. And so to not forget all of those different ways that we've been loving on each other, the proligarchs. I mean, the memes are going to be fire, right? At least there will be that. The memes will be fire. I love the proligarchs. That's awful. Share ways to be in healthy community with people who value love. Learn more about spirituality fits into all of the chaos. Yeah. There is no light Tao without dark Tao, right? And I know is that each person is magnificent, and how to guide them home to that within themselves. Nancy Stubbs, you do know how to do that. Sometimes just for a moment, at other times, something they'll return to over the rest of your life. Y'all, Nancy Stubbs knows how to do that in spades. So as I want us to think as you're thinking about these abilities that you have, we're in these last minutes, a little swap meet. If there is something that you heard there that you liked or something that you want to share, take a minute to send a message out to another person in the group, put a note down to yourself. In the first administration, we saw big marches, we saw big movements out in the streets. And I think now I'm getting this sense, I don't know if you're getting this sense, that it is it is these holding hands with strangers that is the tactics that are going to get us through. Digging in where we are, going in through the grassroots, connecting to the people right around us, not the big show of strength, but the daily practices of strength that we bring into our environment every day. And that means that no one of us has to be the big person to show up and do the one thing, but that each of us just brings our little tiny stitch to the blanket each day. And by there, we really do get somewhere, which means if you need to be offline to take care of yourself, we got you. The fight will go on for a long time, and we'll be here when you get back. And if you are ready to go, get in there and knit away, because we need that as well. So lots of great stuff here in the thread. We have books and resources. Um, this is really great. So please take just a minute to read through that. Muji, a guru on YouTube. I mean, that's a thing. As much as the oligarchs are a problem, and I love that term, we also have contributed for years with our labor building these social media platforms and spaces that are full of our knowledge. That's our knowledge. Those are the things that we know, the memes and the quotes and the words and the books and the things that we've shared with each other. And so, again, don't cede our space too quickly and find any of these ways. Bee's Brave movement, which has been great. I've been following her now on Insta, which is great. Black Liturgies on Instagram. Interview with Talib Kweli, always really helpful. Teresa can offer help leveraging AI. So that's to anybody that's looking for that. The Wake Up by Michelle Jong Kim, spiritual support. Yeah, so we have lots of great resources here. Listening to Black Star, always very helpful to keep us oriented in the bigger picture of time and space. All right, so that brings us to the end of our time here today. I want to say thank you. This is how you can find me. You can find me on Instagram. I'm pretty good at responding to messages there, or you can email me at my email. I'm happy to connect with anyone as we think about these big picture questions. And as I said in the beginning, I'm in the DEI spaces. You can say whatever you want about those three words, but culture is forever. And it is the biggest questions that guide what it means to be human. And those questions are not going anywhere. They're present, they're relevant, they're interesting, and they are portals of possibility. So I wish for all of you the opportunity to engage in some of those spaces and to connect to those big questions. For myself, when I lay down at night, I try to ask myself one question and think about it before bed. So I'm going down at night with possibility and waking up with hopefully a little bit more hope. If hope is a practice, we gotta feed it every day, right? So, any last comments or words before we wrap up here?
Yes, thank you so much. You were made for a time such as this, and I
Oh,
appreciate you.
thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I'll be following you on Be Brave. It's
Thank
great.
you.
All right. Oh, thank you all. Yeah. Glad to be here. This is what we're here for, right? Uh, that's what I was thinking when I made the title is like you wake up and you read the news and you're like, oh my God. And then it's like, yeah, all right, well, I'm still here. So we're made for these times, made for these times. All right, all my circles and spirals, I wish to you just the very best, the easiest, smoothest transition, but transition nonetheless. So I'll see you out there in community. I'll see you online, and I will see you in the future. Wishing you all the best. Oh, yep, next Monday. Please do come through for that. Community care through community grief. That's the title. Great title. Love that. All right.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you everyone for joining us
Thank
today.
you.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see you on Monday.